Relationships go through periods, sometimes really hard times, but there's nothing sweeter than having a family, and that is worth everything.
For years, Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn were seen as the dream couple of Hollywood, the perfect example of love that could last in a world full of short-lived romances. But behind those bright smiles and public appearances, things were not as picture-perfect as everyone believed. Now at 74, Kurt Russell has finally decided to speak out, breaking his silence after years of keeping his true feelings hidden. What he revealed has left fans stunned. Their once beautiful bond was filled with arguments, resentment, and emotional distance that grew over time. The couple who once seemed inseparable began drifting apart, with both of them carrying unspoken anger and disappointment. It turns out their love story was not built on endless happiness. It was slowly breaking under the weight of secrets and pain they could no longer ignore. Kurt Vogel Russell was born on March 17, 1951 in Springfield, Massachusetts. His father, Bing Russell, was a familiar face on screen, while his mother, Louise Julia Cron, brought grace to the stage as a dancer. The Russells carried a mix of English, Irish, German, and Scottish roots, a heritage of performers and dreamers. When Kurt was still young, the family packed up and headed west, settling in Thousand Oaks, California, where sunshine and baseball became central to his world. He spent his childhood on dusty little league fields, his heart set on becoming a professional player. By high school, he was a standout second baseman, later signing a minor league contract in 1971. For 2 seasons, his talent glimmered, an all-star infielder with a bright future until a shoulder injury in 1973 abruptly silenced that dream. The game he loved slipped away before his prime, a heartbreak softened only by his family's shared passion for the sport. His father had once worn the same uniform, and his sister's son, Matt Franco, would one day carry the family legacy forward. Between 1969 and 1975, Kurt also served proudly with the California Air National Guard, balancing discipline and duty as his youthful dreams faded into memory. Kurt Russell's journey into Hollywood began almost by accident. A brief, uncredited appearance in It Happened at the World's Fair in 1963, where he cheekily kicked Elvis Presley in the shin. Few could have guessed that this boy would one day become one of Disney's most cherished stars. That same year, he began appearing on television, earning early guest roles on Our Man Higgins, and then taking center stage as the adventurous young lead in The Travels of Jamie McPheeters. At just 12 years old, Russell was carrying his own television series, a mix of boyish charm and quiet maturity that hinted at the actor he would become. Throughout the 1960s, Kurt Russell drifted across television screens, playing lost sons, runaway boys, and wide-eyed dreamers in shows like The Fugitive, The Virginian, and Gunsmoke. He even showed up on Gilligan's Island as Jungle Boy, a role that perfectly captured his youthful energy. Each part, small as it seemed, stitched another thread into the fabric of his early stardom. Then came the turning point. In 1966, at just 15, Russell signed a 10-year contract with Walt Disney Productions, a commitment that would define his young adulthood. Walt Disney himself took a personal interest in the boy, famously predicting a brilliant future for him shortly before his own death that same year. It is said that the last thing Disney ever wrote was Russell's name, a hauntingly symbolic gesture that tied the two together forever. Russell quickly became the face of Disney's new generation. Films like Follow Me, Boys in 1966, The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes in 1969, and The Barefoot Executive in 1971 cemented his place as the studio's bright young hope. Behind the cheerful comedies and wholesome adventures, however, was a teenager navigating the strange world of fame, where childhood and adulthood blurred too soon. Through the early 70s, Russell continued to evolve, moving between Disney's family films and dramatic roles such as the young ex-convict opposite James Stewart in Fool's Parade in 1971. By 1974, he had appeared in The New Land, a critically admired but short-lived TV drama that showcased a quieter, more mature side of him. Though still tethered to the wholesome image Disney had built, Russell was quietly preparing to step into a far more complex Hollywood world, one that would test, reshape, and ultimately define the man behind the boyish smile. What makes Kurt Russell's story so remarkable is not just his long career, but where that journey led him, to the quiet, enduring love of his life. Goldie Hawn. Their romance did not begin with grand gestures or scripted magic, but with something far more real, a slow, genuine connection that grew stronger with time. They first crossed paths in 1966 while filming the one and only, genuine original family band. At the time, they were little more than acquaintances, two young actors moving through the bustling machinery of Hollywood. Life carried them down different paths, each carving their own space in the industry. But fate, patient as ever, was not finished with them. Nearly 20 years later, in 1983, they met again on the set of Swing Shift. And this time something clicked. It was not the kind of love that explodes overnight. It was a quiet recognition. Two souls who had lived enough, lost enough, and grown enough to finally see one another clearly. Kurt once admitted that his first impression of Goldie was simple and honest. She was radiant, magnetic, someone who drew him in without even trying. But what began as admiration soon deepened into companionship built on trust, laughter, and mutual respect. Together they became one of Hollywood's rare love stories, not because they were perfect, but because they were real. They never felt the need to marry, never bowed to expectations, and yet their bond has outlasted countless star-studded unions. Kurt has often said he still feels like he is meeting Goldie for the first time, even after decades together, a reflection of love that never grows stale, only deeper. Their relationship has weathered fame, time, and the unpredictable nature of life itself, proving that sometimes love does not arrive in a blaze of light. It simply finds you when you have learned how to see it. Behind the curtain of fame and success, Kurt Russell's life carried a quiet weight, a series of heartbreaks that would shape the man behind the charm. In 2003, he faced a loss that shattered his world, the passing of his father, Bing Russell. To Kurt, Bing was not just a parent, he was his closest friend, his mentor, and the unwavering believer who stood by him long before Hollywood ever did. Losing him felt like losing the compass that guided his life. Kurt would later admit that his father's death left him in one of the darkest, loneliest places he had ever known. But fate was not done testing him. In 2014, his mother Louise passed away, the graceful, grounding presence who had nurtured his heart as much as his talent. With both parents gone, Kurt was left standing in the quiet aftermath of grief, the kind that time does not quite heal. His mother and father had been the pillars of his life, the voices he turned to in every storm. Without them, the world seemed painfully silent, the loss cut deeper than most could see. It was not just mourning, it was a battle within. The weight of his grief began to shadow his mental well-being, magnified by the relentless glare of fame. The world saw the smiling actor, the Hollywood survivor, but few saw the man who carried sorrow behind his calm eyes. There were moments when walking away from it all seemed tempting, when the noise of celebrity felt unbearable. Yet through it all, Kurt endured quietly, resiliently. He moved forward not by forgetting, but by carrying his pain with grace, honoring the love that built him and the losses that forever changed him. But the question that lingers is, how did Kurt Russell find the strength to rise every time life tried to bring him to his knees? The answer perhaps lies in one name, Goldie Hawn. To him, she has never been defined by labels. "Sometimes I call her my wife, sometimes my girlfriend," he once said with a smile. But really, she is just Goldie. And that simple truth captures the essence of their bond, pure, unpretentious, and deeply rooted in understanding. Goldie has been more than a partner. She has been the quiet force that steadied him through every storm. When grief hollowed out his heart, she was the warmth that filled it again. When fame became heavy, she was the calm that reminded him of who he really was. Together, they built a life not on appearances, but on shared laughter, respect, and an unspoken promise to stand by each other no matter what. They raised a family, lifted one another's dreams, and endured Hollywood's chaos side by side. Not because they were perfect, but because they were real. What makes their love extraordinary is not the absence of struggle, but their refusal to let struggle define them. And perhaps the most remarkable part of their story is what they chose not to do. They never married. In a world obsessed with ceremony and symbols, Kurt and Goldie quietly redefined what commitment truly means. For more than 40 years, they have lived by their own rules. No rings, no vows, just the daily decision to love and stay. Marriage does not make it work, Kurt once reflected. It is the people who do. Their bond is proof that love, when genuine, does not need validation. It simply endures. It is built not on promises written on paper, but on moments, small, imperfect, beautiful, that remind two people why they chose each other in the first place. And maybe that is the secret to their lasting love. Being open enough to see in another person what you might never have seen in yourself. Kurt Russell's transformation from a child star into one of Hollywood's most versatile leading men began with a single defining role: Elvis. In 1979, portraying the king of rock and roll with uncanny precision, Russell revealed a depth few had seen in him before. The performance earned him an Emmy nomination, marking the beginning of a new era in his career. The film's director, John Carpenter, recognized something raw and magnetic in Russell, and it became the start of a powerful creative partnership that would shape some of cinema's most iconic cult films. Soon after, Russell shed his Disney image completely with Escape from New York in 1981, where he embodied the hardened anti-hero Snake Plissken, a character as rebellious as it was unforgettable. This gritty, dystopian role was a world away from the wholesome image the youth audiences had once known, and it signaled to Hollywood that Kurt Russell was no longer the boy next door. Around the same time, he lent his voice to the grown-up copper in The Fox and the Hound in 1981, a small yet nostalgic return to the studio that had raised him. His reunion with Carpenter for The Thing in 1982 pushed him even further into the realm of complex, tortured characters, roles steeped in tension and fear. Though the film was initially misunderstood, it would later become a classic, its haunting isolation mirroring Russell's own journey through the unpredictable landscape of fame. Then came Silkwood in 1983, which earned him a Golden Globe nomination and solidified his standing as a serious actor. Throughout the mid-1980s, Russell continued to take daring creative leaps, from the noir tones of The Mean Season in 1985 to the supernatural chaos of Big Trouble in Little China in 1986, a film that stumbled at first but later found immortality among fans. His comedic timing shone in Overboard in 1987, while thrillers like Tequila Sunrise in 1988 and Tango and Cash in 1989 reminded audiences of his edge. By the early 1990s, Kurt Russell had mastered reinvention. Whether he was battling flames in Backdraft in 1991, fighting moral decay in Unlawful Entry in 1992, or stepping into legend as Wyatt Earp in Tombstone in 1993, each role carried a quiet intensity. He ventured into science fiction once more with Stargate in 1994, and even lent his voice to Elvis again, this time for Forrest Gump in 1994. Through the rest of the decade in films like Executive Decision in 1996, Escape from L.A. in 1996, and Breakdown in 1997, Russell proved that no genre could contain him. Each character felt like a reflection of his own evolution, a man who had learned to carry both the weight of loss and the strength to keep moving forward as the years unfolded. Kurt Russell continued to prove that his talent carried both range and resilience. In 2001, he appeared as a court psychologist in the haunting thriller Vanilla Sky, but it was his powerful portrayal of Olympic coach Herb Brooks in Miracle in 2004 that reignited the world's admiration. With quiet conviction and emotional grit, Russell captured the spirit of a man who turned ordinary athletes into legends. Critics hailed his performance, calling it one of the finest of his career, a moment where Russell once again seemed to merge completely with his character. The years that followed brought a mix of triumphs, challenges, and unexpected revelations. In 2006, Kurt Russell candidly revealed that during the making of Tombstone in 1993, he had quietly stepped in to guide much of the film's direction after its original director was dismissed. Out of loyalty, he kept the secret for years, honoring his word until after George P. Cosmatos' passing. The confession only deepened respect for Russell, a man devoted not to credit but to craft. He continued to move seamlessly between genres, from the disaster epic Poseidon in 2006 to the ruthless stuntman Mike in Quentin Tarantino's Death Proof in 2007, and later to the chilling The Hateful Eight in 2015 and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in 2019. His rugged screen presence found new audiences through Bone Tomahawk in 2015, while his turn as the enigmatic Mr. Nobody in the Fast and Furious saga introduced him to yet another generation. In 2017, alongside Goldie Hawn, Kurt Russell received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, two names side by side symbolizing a lifetime of love and legacy. That same year, he joined the Marvel Universe as Ego in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, a role that perfectly balanced grandeur and melancholy. He later embodied the spirit of Christmas itself in Netflix's The Christmas Chronicles films, a reminder of the warmth that always lingered beneath his toughness. Through it all, one truth remained constant. Kurt Russell's journey was never defined by fame alone. Long before the cameras, he had been a ballplayer, a young man with a dream that ended too soon after a devastating shoulder injury in 1973. That moment, tragic as it was, became the turning point that led him back to acting. Perhaps that is the story of his life, each loss giving birth to a new beginning, each setback shaping the legend that Hollywood would never forget.